Hello and welcome to a special end of year edition of Starside Chat, which is a podcast that my name is Aaron, do with my co-host Zach. How's it going, Zach?
It's good. Yeah, we're recording this on New Year's Eve actually, but it will be the first episode of 2023, and it's a big one. I always really enjoy doing our top 10 games of the year episode. You have previously pitched changing the format of the show to be like E3 365, where we just talk about
remember that, yeah, E3
stuff all year. And I think it would be a lot more fun to do like a 365 game of the year watch type of a show, where we basically are building a top 10 in real time from week to week.
That's actually not a terrible idea. We could do a thing where every episode there's a segment where we update the list. I'm interested in that for 2023.
Yeah, and we like try to find the game of the year, and we're doing all of that stuff, and also sort of, I guess, to tie it into like the Game Awards as well, sort of previewing that stuff as it's coming.
That actually, I think that would help with recency bias as well, because if we have something we're always talking about every week, that's like something early on in the year, it'll help us to remember that was really good.
Yeah. So I think that would be a fun thing. I always really enjoy listening to other like podcasts from people. Like I always listen to the Min-Max. They do their 210s episode where they like debate their list and try to form a list that everybody's happy with. I always enjoy that stuff. So it's very fun.
That's our declaration for 2023. A new segment called, name pending.
Name pending. Game. I guess Game of the Year watch. What we could call it.
I'll come up with a cool pun, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, we'll work on that. We'll workshop something. We only have one news item this week.
Yeah, it's been slow ever since the Game Awards. There's not really been a ton of news going on. I think, because of the holidays, there haven't been like a bunch of crazy leaks. Although, before we talk about that, I did see something that I think is fake on TikTok going around. That is a fake Tears of the Kingdom Switch box art. Have you seen that?
No.
I believe it is fake. But someone posted some pictures of like a retail Tears of the Kingdom white Switch with like Hyrule glyphs on it and whatnot. So if you see that on TikTok, I believe it has been confirmed fake. But we have more Switch news.
I am a little bit keeping an eye out for like a collector's edition if that ever pops up.
Oh yeah, me too.
Unless I missed it, but
I should. If I knew how Google News Alerts worked, I would create one for Starfield Special Edition announced.
Oh yeah,
because I am waiting for that.
I mean, not to spoil our most anticipated games episode that we're gonna do like next week or whenever. But yeah. Very much so. I would love to get a collector's edition of both Starfield and Tears of the Kingdom. So I'm keeping an eye out for those.
And Silksong.
Well, so, I mean, maybe we should talk about a little bit what we've been playing before we launch into our top 10 games of the year. But
Zach.
I tried to play Hollow Knight.
Trials and Tribulations. You're playing on hard mode.
And I was playing on I didn't know there was such a thing as the hard mode that I was encountering, but basically I tried playing it on my Steam Deck. I took my Steam Deck over the holidays when I was staying with family, and I was like, I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to jump into Hollow Knight. Aaron's going to be so happy.
I am.
And it'll be a good time to like knock this game out before Silksong comes out, and I have a lot to talk about, but made it through the first boss, and it got like stuck in an animation and would not drop the item he's supposed to drop. So I had to reload it. Unfortunately, I didn't have to do the boss fight over again. It was just like the item was just sitting there waiting for me. But I kept like encountering these enemies that would be like flashing like in and out of existence. And I was like, is that supposed to happen? And then like there were other areas I would get to where I would just start taking damage, and there were these like invisible enemies. And so I was texting
you. Texted me at one point, because first you texted me about, hey, what's going on with this boss? And I was like, oh, that's not supposed to happen. So you should reload. And then you texted me, do you ever get an item to defeat the invisible enemies? And I was like, I don't believe there are invisible enemies in the game.
I thought for a second that it was like it was supposed to be that way, and I just like didn't have an item I needed to be able to see certain enemies.
Now, does Hollow Knight have the like Steam Deck ready sticker on it or whatever?
It does, yeah. It's like got the green check mark as like this is approved, and it's supposed to be like an ideal match for Steam Deck, but I don't know.
That's very weird. I wonder if you just need like a fresh install or something.
Yeah, I don't know. So I did some Googling, and I think other people have experienced like the invisible enemies glitch on just PC in general, not just particular to Steam Deck. And so I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I need to uninstall and reinstall, or maybe I'll just try it out on my PC. And I haven't tried it yet on PC yet, but
if you don't jump back in, I think that probably Silksong will make you want to jump back in whenever it eventually comes out. I could see a future where you beat Silksong and you're like, man, I need more of this. And you go back to play Hollow Knight and you have a renewed interest in it. But I mean, I won't be bummed if this has killed it for you for now. I think that you will be back eventually.
Yeah, so because I didn't get to play Hollow Knight, I started playing a different. It's sort of a Metroidvania. Death's Gambit Afterlife is like sort of a Souls-like side-scrolling RPG that has some Metroidvania elements to it. It's very good. I feel like I'm getting near the end now, but it's got a nice pixel art style. I really like the soundtrack too, and the combat's pretty good. I would say it's not as good as Grime. Grime's combat just feels really good. Like it's very weighty. But the combat in Death's Gambit Afterlife is also pretty good. And there are some crazy boss fights in it. And one of the things about it is you have to like, I guess not to spoil anything, but I think you do have to like beat at least 5 of them on like the heroic difficulty. So after you like beat a boss fight, you can like interact with that area again, and it'll give you the option if you want to try to do it again, but on like heroic difficulty. And you have to do at least 5 of those to get like the true ending, or like the best possible ending.
Interesting.
And so I've done that. So I think I am primed for like the good ending. I just have to get through the rest of the game, and I don't know exactly how long I'm in. Probably a solid close to like 20 hours. So I'm gonna try to wrap that up here before I move on to something else, just so I don't because this game, I think we may have talked about it on the podcast before.
It sounds familiar to me.
It originally launched as Death's Gambit like a few years ago, and I think it was even like a Kickstarter game, and it like was a little underwhelming for people. It like had some issues, and people were kind of disappointed by it. So the developers took all the feedback and like made a ton of changes and revamped a lot of stuff, and basically redid combat and weapons and a lot of things, and added a bunch more content, and relaunched the game like a year or two later as Death's Gambit Afterlife. And ever since then, like it's overwhelmingly positive reviews if you look for reviews for it. And yeah, it's pretty good. I'm liking it quite a bit. So also it's fully voiced. Like rare that you get one of these games that's like so story driven and like has like fully voiced dialogue and all of that.
I actually can't think of a fully voiced Metroidvania.
Yeah, so I think it's very good if you like Metroidvanias or like side scrolling RPGs. Definitely give this game a look. I picked it up like a year or two ago, I think, when it got like a physical release, and I like started playing it, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then I just like fell off of it because a bunch of other stuff came out, and I just got sidetracked. And so I finally went back to it when I realized that Hollow Knight was not going to happen. So yeah, that's all I've been playing. But I guess we can jump into our top 10 games of the year.
How do you want to go back and forth? I'll do my top 10 or my 10 one first, and you do your 10.
Yeah, let's do it that way. We'll start with 10.
You played less or more games than me, much more games than me this year. And we were talking previous to or starting to record. I have a resolution to play more games this year. I watch too much YouTube, I think. So in 2023, I'm going to hopefully not struggle to create a top 10. But so a couple of mine are games that did not come out this year, but I enjoyed this year. And those are at the bottom, even though they're really good games. I put them at the bottom because they didn't come out this year.
Okay.
My number 10 is a game that didn't come out this year or last year. It is a free update to a game that I played a good amount in January. It was one of the first games I played this year. And that is the free update for Baba Is You. I don't know if you recall this game, but it was that 2D puzzler, very, very interesting and unique puzzle game where I was going to say you're a little guy, but sometimes you're not a little guy. But you're put onto these like black backgrounds. The music is very good.
Yeah, I think I remember that game.
A great game that I loved a lot. And I played a good amount of it. I didn't beat it all because some of the puzzles were just completely over my head. But I think it was like in November or December of last year. They were just like, hey, a free update. Here's 150 new puzzles, like basically new levels. I was like, oh man. And I checked it out. And some of them were very crazy. And for like a good 2 or 3 weeks, I was just like delving into these. And I got as far as I could in the new DLC. But I loved it. And I love that game. And I would love another one or just like another free DLC or even another paid DLC. But they did some crazy stuff with basically the conceit of that game is that you're moving tiles around, but some of the tiles are words. And if you line the words up, it will change things. So on every screen, there is something that says like Baba Is You, which is the name of the game. But it also means that the player character is controlling Baba. But you can change that to be like, plant is you. And now all the plants on screen are you. But they do other stuff in the DLC that's like, you can move it so that it's like level is, I forget what it is, like POV or 3D. And if you move that into place, then it becomes almost like Wolfenstein, because now instead of 3D or instead of 2D, it becomes 3D and you're kind of like moving around within the space, which is very crazy. And they do a lot of other really fun, interesting things with this playset that you have of just these words that you can put in any order. But a lovely game. Did not come out this year or last year, but the free DLC came out last year. And I thoroughly enjoyed it in January and parts of February. So that's my number 10.
Well, my number 10 is Ghostwire Tokyo. So this game, I think, was a little bit disappointing for people at launch because it came out like shortly after Elden Ring and Horizon. And there was just like a bunch of other stuff to play at the time. And so it kind of got overlooked a little bit, but I waited and didn't play it until October. And it's just like, it's not like, I don't know. When you think of like open world games, I kind of think of like the 360 era where you had like just a ton of open world games and you had like your GTAs and your Red Dead Redemptions that were these like big budget ones that had like really meaty side quests and all of that. And then you had like something like Red Faction Guerrilla or Prototype where the side quests were more like a handful of activities that you would kind of repeat over and over again. There were different places you could go and you were always doing the same sort of activities over and over again as like side quests. This is that kind of a game. But it's also like a collectathon, and I just found it like I liked the animations. I liked the like hand combat that you were doing, which felt really good with the DualSense because it used like the haptics and the adaptive triggers and all of that. And I just enjoyed like putting on a show or a podcast and just like exploring like rain-soaked nighttime Tokyo. And just collecting stuff, and that's basically what the game was. And so yeah, I according to my sort of end of year PlayStation wrap up or whatever, I put probably a good like 40-50 hours into it.
Oh wow.
But the thing is, it's like a shorter game if you just play the main story. So I also kind of like that it's smaller and shorter. It's not like one of these like Assassin's Creed Valhallas where it's like if you put 150 hours in, you might be halfway through that game. It just feels like so much more achievable to actually play this game. So it was not daunting when I thought of actually jumping in to play it. So that's my number 10.
My number 9, another game that super did not come out this year, but I thoroughly enjoyed over the summer. It's a game that you love, Luigi's Mansion 3.
Yes, I do love that game.
I loved playing through this game this year. It's like if this was the year it came out, it would be top of my list. But I put it low because there are things that actually did come out this year. But that's not to speak to any of it. Even though it's my number 9, it is like a top 5 game. I loved it. I loved playing it with my girlfriend, and there was some fun co-op stuff. It was great. Thoroughly enjoyed. We don't have to really touch on it much because we've already talked about Luigi's Mansion so much on this podcast, but a great game. Yeah,
I revisited it this year as well, just in playing it with family members, and it's such a delight to go back to. Definitely, I think a top 5 Nintendo Switch game.
The production design alone, like the theming of every floor is just so good.
Yeah, and so polished, like looking and feeling compared to like other non-first party Nintendo games. But
hit me with that number 9.
My number 9 is Hack, Haak. I'm not even sure if I know how to pronounce this correctly, but it's a Metroidvania that I played over Thanksgiving, and it's, I think, developed by like a small like indie Chinese development studio, and it's just like, it might be a little bit slow to get into, but once you get into it, like it's got some very satisfying like movement mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And I put probably a solid like 30 hours into this, and like I thought the story was interesting. Like there's a side quest in it. Actually, it might be a main quest even, that is, I swear, just like straight out of Inception, like, where you like basically go into somebody's mind and you like fight them as a boss to like change their mind about something. It's like very cool. But yeah, it felt really good to just explore the different areas, and you were always finding new items to upgrade your character, and it just had like a really good sense of progression the entire way through. So highly recommend it. It's a game that did not get like mainstream like games media attention at all. I only heard about this game from being in that Metroidvania subreddit, and it got a lot of positive recommendations from that subreddit, so I highly recommend it. What's your number 8?
I wonder if this will be on your list. I almost didn't include this because I don't know if I wanted it on a top 10 list. I mean, it was a fine game, but I realized I was having trouble filling out my list, so I included it anyway. My number 8 is Stray. Is this on your list?
It is not in my top 10, but we talked before the podcast. I have a top 20 that I'll share 11 through 20 as a honorable mention later, but it is on that part.
I wanted it to be much more than it was. As it was, I mean, it was a fine game. The cat was cute. It was I think I beat it in like 2 sittings because it's very short, but I didn't super like the ending. And I just wished, I don't know, I wanted a deeper gameplay than I guess just what was advertised. But it was good. I liked it. I'm glad I finished it, which is I didn't finish mini games this year, so that's why it's on the list. But
I enjoyed my time with it. It just, like you said, it's a little short. It's a little bit lacking in terms of like, we almost want more progression out of it.
Yeah, I think this game would have been really cool if you could have like upgraded stuff with your backpack, kind of. I don't know. I'm not sure what would have made it more in my wheelhouse, but
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know what I expected from it, but it's like a very competent game, and it's perfectly enjoyable. Like I feel like everybody that played it liked it, but nobody was like super high on it.
I think
But
my
game.
expectations were way too high because the first trailer for it came out like years and years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, they're working on this for so long. It's going to be like, there's going to be great, crazy stuff in this. And then it was just like, a basic game, which was fine, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think maybe expectations, had a big role in how people perceived it. But
what's your number 8?
My number 8 is Tinykin.
Ah, yes.
This game, so I actually got my sister hooked on this game. I let her try it out on my Steam Deck over the holidays, and she ended up buying it on her Switch so she could play more of it. It is just a game that I don't even know how to describe it. It's little bit like Pikmin, where you're going around getting these little creatures that sort of follow you around, and you can use them to do different tasks for you. Like there's like a strong Tinykin that you throw at big objects and they'll pick it up and carry it for you. And then there's like a kind that you can throw and they sort of form a ladder so you can climb them. And you're sort of solving different puzzles using the various types of Tinykin that you find. And it's just like a really satisfying game where you're sort of a small person in like a giant like living room or kitchen or bathroom or bedroom. And so it's a little like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where you're like in a giant house and you're just a very small person. But like the controls are like so snappy and it's so polished in how it feels to play that it's just like one of the best feeling games that I've played all year. It is a little short. I almost wish there was a little bit more to it, but it's just a very, very satisfying game that I cannot recommend enough.
Yeah, it was on my list as well, but I haven't picked it up yet.
You should definitely play it because I think you would love it.
My number 7 is not a game and not something that came out in 2022, but I bought a license for Foundry Virtual Tabletop, which I've talked about on the podcast before, which is kind of like Roll20, but you host it on your computer and has a lot more functionality. It's great because it's not a subscription. It's just a one-time purchase. It's like $40 or something, but it's almost like the next level. When I was a child, I was very into RPG Maker and I would make tons of RPG Maker games. This is like almost the next level of that, but it incorporates Dungeons and Dragons or any role-playing game that you want. There's a ton of systems you can load into this. I've been watching with bated breath all of the coverage about 1D&D that they're releasing. And I don't know how they're going to do their supposed like first-party virtual tabletop, but I don't know if it's going to be for me. It seems like it's going to be like Unreal Engine, like very graphics intensive, whereas Foundry you can run on almost any laptop. Like it can almost be on a Chromebook. Foundry Virtual Tabletop, or Foundry VTT, is the subreddit. A great addition to something I have tinkered and played with. I love something where I can tinker around with it, especially, gaming related. So if you do Roll20 and you're kind of tired of the basic stuff and you're looking to upgrade, you want like much more diversity of like gameplay styles and like modules you can load into it. It's something that I've super loved to play with this year. So Foundry Virtual Tabletop is my number 7.
Cool. So my number 7, I wonder if this is probably on your list and maybe a little bit higher up, so we can talk about it more. But it is Kirby and the Forgotten Land.
It is on my list. We can talk about it now, though.
Okay. This is the first Kirby game that I think I've played since like the NES, like Kirby's Adventure.
Did you ever play the N64 one?
No.
That was the first one I ever played.
So it's been a long time since I had played a Kirby game, and this one is just so good. It feels very good to play, and I don't know, like I played it super early on in the year. I feel like I took a break from Elden Ring to play this, and then
they did come out right around the same time.
Yeah, because they came out actually. I think Ghostwire Tokyo and Kirby and the Forgotten Land came out on the same day, like almost exactly a month after Elden Ring. So it was a weird like time where there was just a bunch of stuff out, but it's like a little more challenging than I thought it was going to be. Everybody joked, like, because everybody was playing Elden Ring at the time. They're like, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, it's so easy. But like, you get to some of those bosses, especially towards the end of the game, and they're no joke. They were
those final bosses are they're difficult.
But it's like, very colorful. It's got a nice soundtrack. It's like very fun to just like go through the levels and try to collect everything. And it's up there as far as like Nintendo first party releases for me. I think
I agree.
It's not quite Super Mario Odyssey level, but it's like fairly close. So what's your number 6?
I think this is probably on your list, but maybe a little higher. Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope.
Ooh, we nailed it. It's also my number 6.
Oh, well, let's talk about it right now.
All right.
I played a little bit more. I don't know. I loved this game, and I haven't gotten as far. I'm sort of saving it and parsing it out. Almost like if you were to buy like a very old fine cheese. You only take like a sliver of it every once in a while. But I know that in the next time, whenever I find time to sit down and play more of it, I always play for like an hour or 2 hours.
Yeah.
I loved it. I think they refined everything about the original game and made it better. The music is just so good. They like all the new characters you can play as and new abilities you have access to. And the fact that you can change things so often, like that was a problem with the first game, is you would get kind of stuck into playing as these same 3 characters, and like experience didn't cross over, and your currency, once you spent it, was spent. But they fixed so many things in this to just really streamline it and make it just like a super enjoyable experience, like front to back.
Yeah, I didn't play the first one, but I love the way they designed like the combat and the movement abilities, and it was really fun to like swap characters in and out depending on like what battle you were in. And not to spoil it for you because you're not there yet, but towards the end you do get like an opportunity where you get to use everybody.
I'm very much looking forward to that.
So I really liked the way they sort of brought everybody into it, even if they were characters you hadn't used much. But the skill trees were good. I liked the sort of progression hooks of it as well.
And you can respec at any time.
Yeah, so that was nice as well. So you didn't have to like spend some sort of resource to be able to do that. But also it's just like leveling up the sparks and how each of those could sort of really impact how you approached battle as well. Just like having different sparks attached to your sort of in your loadout for your different characters. I really like that. And I don't play a lot of like the strategy style games, but this one just like felt really good to play. So I really liked it. And I liked the overworld stuff too, where you're kind of going around solving little puzzles and opening up different areas. So very good. Also good soundtrack. Like a bunch of like big name industry composers worked on the soundtrack. The
first game was similar to that, where they had these like beautiful, almost orchestral versions of the original Mario music, and they just like expanded on that even more. And just like every world you go to, like even walking like across a beach, there's a new soundtrack that starts playing, and it's great.
Yeah, and very good podcast game. Like underrated podcast game, I would say. Like I would put on either a podcast or a TV show, and I would just go through the different battles, and like, because some of the battles I think later on can get a little bit lengthy, and like obviously you're not listening to a story, you're just sort of moving characters around and like queuing up attacks and stuff. So it was like a perfect opportunity to like put on a podcast and bang out some of those battles. So, what's your number 5?
I wonder if this is on your list. Our list has been kind of divergent up until this point, but what if our top 6 and our top 5 are the exact same? My number 5 is Vampire Survivors.
Ooh, didn't quite make the top 10 for me, but it is on my list.
I loved this game. I love tiny little games like this. Last year, Loop Hero was on my list as one of my top 10. And this, I feel like, is in the very same vein where I can just throw this on and listen to a podcast. Or I have like a YouTube playlist of like 15 different songs that I could listen to forever. And I would just throw that on and play a couple rounds of Vampire Survivors. Very satisfying. We've talked about it on the podcast before, how we both are pretty into it.
Yeah,
but I love this game. I love, and the developer as well has been like super like, I'm going to add more and more content, and the price is, it's like maybe $1 more now, but it's totally worth it. And they've added some free DLC, and it's great. Or no, maybe the DLC might be paid, but I think it's also only like $2. But yeah, I love this game. Yeah,
and you can play for free on your phone now.
Yes, it's on your phone. You can play it in portrait mode as well, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Super good game to zone out in.
It is. It's sort of a bullet hell, but you don't have to do any of the like actual button presses for like your attacks. You literally are just like moving a character around.
This is a rare game that I think, I mean, this happens every couple of years where it kind of invented a new genre.
Yeah.
And now there are Vampire Survivors likes all over the place. So it's very cool. And I wanted to put it on my list just for that, for like kind of inventing a new genre.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had this like way up there within like the top 3 of their lists this year. Is like one of those games that is it eats a lot of time, like, because you can play a round in like a half an hour.
Yeah.
And so you could just like drop in for a quick run and then be done again. But generally speaking, people would say they were going to do that, and then they would end up playing for several hours because it was that good. But and a lot of people joked about how their Steam Decks just kind of became Vampire Survivors machines there for a while. And I didn't play as much of it as a lot of other people did. I liked the concept of it, and I enjoyed it well enough. It is basically like the RPG, like distilled down to its basest form. And there is that part of me that really enjoys like leveling up and like continually getting new abilities and new power-ups and stuff like that. And this does a really good job of that. And so I get why it's like addicting for a lot of people, but I didn't play it as much as maybe some other people did.
Hit me with that number 5, Zach.
My number 5 is Pentiment.
Ooh, this is a game I am going to check out eventually, but I haven't gotten the chance to yet.
I definitely recommend it. It is a very unique art style. It's the game that's set in the 1500s, and you play an artist, and you end up sort of wrapped up in a murder mystery whodunit situation. And it plays out in like 3 acts, and though there are like a couple of whodunits in there that you're trying to solve, you also know that there's sort of a bigger mystery at play that you're also trying to solve. And it is, I don't normally play very many of these, like I guess they're point and click adventures or like sort of visual novel type of a game. Mm-hmm. I don't play them very often, but this one like really hooked me. It is maybe, some people will say it's a little slow to start, but I don't know. I was on board with this from the get-go, and I really liked the style of it. And it is probably my second favorite story in a game this year.
Interesting.
So I definitely recommend this one. It is on Game Pass if you have Game Pass, so there's no reason not to try it, but I wish it were voiced. If it were fully voiced, then it would be like even that much better. But
it could happen. I mean, they came out with a fully voiced Disco Elysium. That wasn't fully voiced originally.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, but it is a lot of reading if you're not into that, I guess. But it's probably not a game for everyone. But I really liked it, and I do think it's a game that has stuck with me, and it probably will stick with me. And I'm almost curious, like maybe in like a month or two, when I'm a little bit further removed from it, if I start a new playthrough and just make completely different decisions and like build a completely different character as well, what it would look like. So that's my number 5. What's your number 4?
Dome Keeper.
I figured this would be on your list. I really like this game as well. It didn't quite make my top 10, but I really like it.
Loved Dome Keeper. Similar to Vampire Survivors, something I could zone out to. They I don't know if you've done it yet, but have you tried the new character yet?
I have not jumped back in to try out the Assessor, no.
I haven't either. It actually, I had it on my old computer, and then I built that new computer, and I haven't installed Domekeeper on here yet. But my save file is still there, so everything I have should be unlocked in like the Steam cloud. But I'm so interested in trying that. Domekeeper's great. I love it. The sound is cool. I love Drillbert, even though he's not the best upgrade. I love to look at him mining and sleeping. I want more and more of this game, and I hope that it has a long tail. Like, after the Assessor, I hope that there's more things on their timeline. But I was very into it. I completed one of like all three of the like map, or all four of the map sizes. And I used like both of the domes. I'm all about this game, and I think when I have some more downtime, I'm gonna try out that Assessor as well and keep tabs on this game, just to see how it develops. But very into Domekeeper as a concept and as a game.
It's another one that's a little like Vampire Survivors, where it's such a simple concept, but it's so well done that it like can be a big time sink because you just get hooked on it.
Both Domekeeper and Vampire Survivors, you can play with just like one hand, like WASD and like maybe spacebar, which is very cool if you're also like looking at your phone or you just want to like fully recline.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another good podcast game. Yeah, I loved the game as well. I do think it, like, once I completed a few runs, it was a little like, okay, I wish there was a little bit more to it, a little bit more of a long tail to keep me coming back. But what I played of it, I absolutely loved, and it definitely is a game that stood out to me this year. I wish that it had been, like, I had room for it in my top 10, but I had so many other games that it just fell just outside.
What is your... Are we on 4?
I think we're on 4, yeah. My number 4 is Horizon Forbidden West.
Whoa!
Now, I haven't finished this game yet, but I have put, according to my year-end Sony wrap-up thing, I've put over 60 hours into this game. I do plan on going back to it and finishing it because I am interested to see where the story's going. I think the story got more interesting than I expected it to.
Yeah.
But it is such a huge open world, and it is maybe the best looking game I've ever seen. It is so incredible to look at, just like from the character models, facial animations, like conversations, and just like the environments. Like, it is an incredible game to look at, especially running in like 4K on the PS5. And like it obviously it's a first party Sony game, so it makes good use of the DualSense. And it is like a very, very polished game to like, in how it feels to like move around the world and to use your different combat abilities. And yeah, it is a very good game that I think gets short shrift, in part because it came out so close to Elden Ring, but also just the style of open world game it is. I feel like a lot of people have sort of, written that style of game off, and so when a new Assassin's Creed or Far Cry game comes out these days, like everybody immediately just sort of rolls their eyes and moves on. And I feel like that hurts a game like Horizon, unfortunately, because it doesn't matter how good it is, people are like, oh yeah, I've played this style of game before and I don't need another one. So I feel like that's unfortunate for the team that made this game, because you can tell a lot of work went into it, but I think it's good and deserving of being in the top 5. Tell me about your number 3.
My number 3, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which we already talked about. What's your number 3?
My number 3, now this is the only one on my list that's a little bit of a cheat, but it is Grime.
Well, technically it did come out at some platforms. I was going to say,
the reason why it's only technically a cheat, it did make its debut on like Stadia and PC in 2021, but it got a console release along with a new DLC that like really expanded the game and made a lot of big changes and like quality of life improvements when it came out in December. So it is sort of a new to 2022 game, especially if you play exclusively on consoles. But it's a Metroidvania. We've talked about it a bunch. I feel like because I played it on Steam Deck over the summer and just couldn't put it down. I love the combat. It's a Souls-like Metroidvania that has like a really good parry mechanic and some really cool boss fights, like really well-designed boss fights. And like it's a little bit slow to get the different movement mechanics, but like towards the end of the game, you're just like really flying around and doing like some crazy movement puzzles to get from point A to point B. And I think the story is also interesting. I'm not sure I understand it, but it's very cool.
This game is on my list for 2023 when it comes out for Switch. I'm going to pick it up in a heartbeat.
I'm definitely looking forward to it finally coming out on Switch. I hope that it runs well on the Switch, and I would definitely recommend playing it once it does. But what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a little game called Haiku the Robot.
Oh, yeah. I forgot you played this.
Kind of flew under the radar. Not a lot of people talked about it, but I was really in the mood for something Hollow Knight-like, and this was very much a Hollow Knight-like. Great little art design. The music was great. The story was interesting. I didn't do like everything you need to do to get like the best ending because I didn't want to do like a crazy hard boss rush, but I liked it a lot. And even though it was short, I thoroughly enjoyed. I wonder what percent I got on. I think I got a high-ish, like maybe like 60 or 70% complete on Steam. But I loved this game, and I will revisit it if it. I think it already came out to Switch, maybe, or it's going to be released on Switch. But I'll pick this up again on Switch because it was a great tiny little game. You're a little robot going around. You get some interesting movement abilities. I do wish the like upgrade paths were a little more complex, but the NPC design in it is great. And like every time I met a new robot, it was just like a little cute little guy that I would look at. So highly recommend Haiku the Robot if you're looking for something to tide you over for Silksong. I think it's a great little, I would not call it like, it's nowhere on the same level as Hollow Knight or Silksong, but it is like a great imitation.
Yeah, I think you and I like our new favorite subgenre is the Metroidvania.
It's true.
Ever since Metroid Dread, and we've both sort of gone back and played some like highly rated Metroidvanias, and so it's something I know. Certainly for me, it's a genre I'm always sort of keeping an eye out for, like another like new really good one. So very cool.
Hit me with that number 2.
My number 2 is God of War Ragnarok.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I guess that gives away my number 1.
It gives away my number 1 as well, because my number 1 is God of War, but we can talk about it right now.
Yeah, so I mean, great story. I feel like a lot of people sort of wrote this one off because God of War 2018 was like so well liked, and they're like, oh, this is just more of that. But I think it's a little bit the other way, where God of War 2018 was an amuse-bouche leading to the main event, which is God of War Ragnarok. And I just think it hooked me in a way that 2018 never quite did. Like, I liked that game, but it was not my game of the year that year, the way it was for a lot of people. I think this game, almost the way we talked about with, what was it, Mario and Rabbids, where the sequel was sort of a refinement of things, but also it just did a lot of other things better, I thought. There were a lot of cool moments in the 2018 God of War, but like the story in God of War Ragnarok was definitely my favorite. Like, it's a little bit of a joke, but it's the best big budget movie that I saw in 2022. Yeah, very cinematic. I liked the different the fact that you get a spear in this one.
And you play as Atreus sometimes.
Yeah, and you get to play as Atreus. So contrary to what some people have said about Ragnarok, I do think they like added enough to it to make it feel different. And
oh yeah, I agree.
Some of the discourse around this game annoys me because I think people are looking for ways to not give it as much credit as it deserves. But I thought it was so good. Like there's that scene at the beginning that's basically from Inglourious Bastards where they sit in the shack and have a little conversation. I thought all of that was like so well done.
So good.
And yeah, like the Berserker fights were like fun to try to push through. I still have more stuff to go back and do, like post the ending of the story. But like, I don't know. I loved the characters. I loved the story. And this one knocked my socks off. I was very close at times to making this my number one.
And let's talk about this. The accessibility options. Like I played this with those like boss checkpoints enabled, which is a revelation to me. Like it still makes you feel like you're beating the boss. Like it's not just a button where you like click end battle or whatever, but it's so gratifying to not have to bang your head against a wall for so long. Like you reload after you die and you already have like a third of the health down. Like that's the way to do it. And I don't know. I don't know if I would have beaten it by now if I didn't have that feature. And
one of the things that I like about God of War Ragnarok that I think Elden Ring should have borrowed is that the game wants you to be able to do everything and complete everything such that it's like, don't worry, you can play through the entire story and still go back and like mop up all the rest of the stuff. Like it's not, you're never... Like at no point are you going to lock yourself out of content or achievements or trophies or whatever. You can do everything in whatever order you want. Just go ahead and do it. And like, we're not going to block you from doing stuff. And I thought that was like a very nice accessibility feature. Actually, to give some credit to Horizon again, like both of these games, like first party Sony games, have like an insane amount of accessibility features that really streamline things for you and make it so that like if you don't want to like in God of War when there's those like button prompt things during a cutscene that's happening, like you don't just have to mash the circle button over and over again if you don't want to. You can just press the whole you can change it in the accessibility features, so all you have to do is hold it. And that just like, I was like, yes, because I hate when I have to mash a button over and over again. Let me just hold the button down. And it's like little touches like that are just so good. But yeah.
Let's talk about Elden Ring, your number one.
Did this make your list at all?
No.
No? Okay. Yeah.
It didn't even make... Sure. I have a couple honorable mentions that I will talk about, but it didn't even make that. Because I played it for a good 4 or 5 hours, but I don't know. I bounced off of it. I kept bouncing off of it. I just couldn't get into it.
So I went back and listened to parts of our episodes because we talked about this. We must have talked about it for like 4 or 5 episodes in a row. And you can like chart my 180 that I did from our first discussion on it to like being where I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can get into the combat. It's like seems very difficult, and it's I feel bad and about how much like runes I'm losing all the time and all of this. And then by the end of it, I'm like, yeah, I loved it. Couldn't get enough of it, and the combat wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, like, I put in probably over 100 hours into this game. And it's literally one of those games where like you just explore everywhere and there's like all kinds of crazy boss fights to do. And it just like, you have to get over the hump is the thing. Like it's a little bit of a hill to climb, but once you kind of like learn the ropes enough and you've sort of built up your character enough to where you start feeling pretty strong, and you just sort of learn that you're not going to necessarily beat every boss in one try. And once you kind of come to acceptance with that, it just like, it really starts clicking. And once it clicked for me, I I was on board with it till the end. And also, like, the game, the reason why Elden Ring, I think, is like such a good like mass appeal version of the Dark Souls or Soulsborne thing is that because it's an open world, you don't have to like bang your head against a boss fight if you're struggling with it. You can just like go explore somewhere else, and you can like level up for a while and grind until you become over leveled for every challenge that you face. And I definitely did that. So I basically turned Elden Ring into easy mode, and I loved it for that. But it's definitely the game that like was the biggest release by far. It was for months on end there. Like, it was all anyone was talking about and playing.
It's true.
And it was like, it had such a huge like cultural impact and like big footprint in terms of like the games industry. And it was just fun to sort of be in on that conversation as it was happening. It felt like a giant game club with like everyone who plays games was like, you know, playing and talking about it. Like, every podcast that is related to video games that I listen to, people were like talking about where they were at in the game. And it was like fun to sort of be like, oh yeah, I did that too. Or like, oh, I'm about to get there. And it was just like fun to listen to. And I can't think of another game that like hit in quite that way. That was that big.
Yeah.
That was like sort of constantly in conversation. Like maybe to like a much smaller degree, something like, you know, when we get into Destiny and there's like new content and everybody's playing it and talking about it, to a much lesser degree, that something like that. But like, I don't know, I can't think of a game that hit in such a big way before. So that's why it's got to be my number one.
I got a couple honorable mentions to talk about. I know you have a top 20, so we can go over the ones that didn't make your top 10. But briefly, Gloomwood and Cultic technically came out this year as like early access, but both of them I think are not complete. And I have read articles independently about both of them that are saying like, you should really wait to play this, because both of them I think are only like, you know, 10 or 30% done. Gloomwood especially, people were like, man, I wish I had waited to play the full game, because it is like an iteration on Thief, very much so. And I love the original, like Thief 2 and all that stuff. But I will play these eventually, maybe even later in 2023, and they might make my list in 2023 when they like fully release. Cultic is something I very much love, and they have made a huge improvements to it since the last time we talked about it. And then obviously, Bayonetta 3 came out this year, and I think if I had played it, it would be probably in my top 3, but I just never got around to it, and then the holidays got busy. So I will play this eventually, and probably it will show up in my, well, I don't know what's going to happen in 2023. It's going to be a packed year, but eventually I will play Bayonetta 3, and I will probably love it and talk about it on the podcast. But as of right now, I'll just honorably mention it, but I've heard great things about it.
Okay, so my 11 through 20, number 11 is Nobody Saves the World.
I remember that. Yes, that was the first big game of the year.
Yeah, it was the first big thing that hit in like January, and it felt like everybody was playing it and talking about it. I played it on Game Pass, and it was, it's very good. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's sort of a top-down like RPG where you play as this like blob boy, I guess, who like is able to like turn himself into different creatures, and so you're leveling up the different creatures and using them for different purposes. And it's like, I don't know, it was really good, and I wanted to, it was on my list of like, don't forget this game like all year, because it came out so early. But really liked it, and it's my number 11. Number 12, I had Dome Keeper. We already talked about that game. Really liked it. Number 13 was Tunic. I liked maybe 80% of this game.
Was the 20% you didn't like the combat?
It was the combat, and it was like maybe the last boss or two. Yeah. It's like, I liked just about everything about the game. I liked the art style, the music. The fact that it is like a Souls-like mixed with a Zelda-like is like, on paper, that should be like, a great thing for me. But I just didn't like the combat. But to its credit, when we're talking about accessibility features, it does let you turn off stamina usage, basically, so you can dodge roll and block and attack to your heart's content without running out of stamina, because it's very punishing if you do run out of stamina.
Yeah, I really don't know how you would play that with their stamina system. Like, it really is crippling, I feel.
Yeah, because if you run out of stamina and that bar turns red, you take more damage. So and of course, once you run out of stamina, you can no longer block or dodge, so you're going to take damage. It was just like, it felt too punishing, especially for a game whose combat wasn't that great to begin with. And then like the final, I did switch off the stamina like partway through the game, and I just went that route for a long time. And then like the final boss or two like kind of broke me in a way where I had to turn on the no damage mode, where you basically are invincible. And I got through it just only because of that. I probably would not have finished the game if not for that. And that final boss I was playing, I was like, I was just like watching everything happen in awe. I was like, there's no way I would ever beat this boss without invincibility mode. So I liked a lot of what this game was doing. I like that you're finding like pages of the instruction manual.
That was an amazing gameplay feature. Like,
it was a very cool concept.
Yeah, I loved that.
But just couldn't get behind the combat of it. So number 14 is the High Isle expansion to Elder Scrolls Online. I played that for a good long time this summer. Actually completed it. It's the first expansion that I think I played all the way through in quite a while. So it got me back into the game for quite a while this summer. 15 is Vampire Survivors. We talked about that. Very addicting game. 16 is Marvel Snap. This phone game that is like a really good sort of card-based battle system that I didn't play as much as everybody else that was super into it, but I really liked it, and I thought it was like simple to learn but difficult to master, but very fun to play. 17 was Shredder's Revenge, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. Short game. Loved the soundtrack of it. I'm like still listening to that because it's like so very 90s inspired, so very like straight out of the SNES era. Very good and fun enough as just like a beat 'em up or brawler type of a game. 18 was Stray. We talked about that already. 19 was A Plague Tale Requiem, which is another game that I didn't finish, but I was kind of into while I was playing it. And then 20 was Warhammer 40k Darktide, a game that could have been higher up my list if it worked. It was very fun. It was very cool. I was super into it. I wanted to play this game so much. It just doesn't work. Is what it really comes down to. But hopefully they will fix it up and make it work better, and then I will be able to jump back in and have a good time with it. But that's my list.
I have a bold prediction, Zach, and we can come back to this episode and view it from the lens of 2024.
Okay.
But when we're making our top 10 list next year, I'm going to say that you will have Starfield as your number one. And I'm going to say I will have Silk Song as my number one. And it will be crazy
neither
because
of us will have Tears of the Kingdom as our
that's
number
right.
one.
That's my bold prediction.
That is a bold prediction. It's interesting. And I can see that happening as well.
But I think it will be both of our number twos.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I don't think you're far off with that. Very interesting. The one thing we forgot to mention was the fact that Digital Foundry confirmed that the Switch Pro was planned, but was scrapped by Nintendo, most likely due to like chip shortages and everything. And
COVID
that
stuff.
ended up having to launch as the Switch OLED instead of the Switch Pro. And so now they're just waiting for whatever the next console generation will be. And that makes me wonder, like, how well will Tears of the Kingdom run? Like, we saw
question.
Like maybe Nintendo's highest profile game that came out this year was that Pokemon game that ran so poorly on the Switch. So I mean, will Tears of the Kingdom not be our number one game because of performance issues?
I don't know.
So very interesting. I don't know.
Should we get in briefly to what we've been watching over the holidays?
Yeah, go for it. I know you have some stuff you watched.
First is the thing I did not watch. I ate. Zach, have you ever been to a Fogo de Chao?
No.
I had not either, but I've always heard about it. It's one of those Brazilian steakhouse concepts where you have like almost a coaster on your table that has a red side and a green side. If you flip it to green, people will just walk up to you and be like, "Do you want part of this meat that I have on this skewer?" And you'll be like, "Okay." And then they give you little tongs and they'll cut it for you and then you peel it off. And that just keeps happening until you flip it to red. It was my brother's birthday and we're like, let's have a little adventure. And so it is like more expensive than like, I think it's like $60 a head or something. But it's all you can eat basically. And they had really good limeade. They have this thing called Brazilian limeade that has like, I think like condensed milk in it or something, but it's very good. But as like a night out in the town, it was something I'd never experienced before, but I liked it. And then, let's talk about this. I watched Glass Onion. Have you watched this yet, Zach?
I have not seen it, no.
Did you like Knives Out?
I was only so-so on that movie.
I really liked Knives Out. I don't really watch a lot of mystery, like whodunit movies. That's like not really my genre, but I really like Knives Out, and I watched Glass Onion, and I feel like it's I don't know that it's better, but I think it's equally as good as Knives Out. It's difficult to talk about like all the like twists and turns and whatnot, but very into it. I liked what they did with this one. It's very different from the first one as far as like the setting and how the story develops, but I will say similar to the first one, there is like a pivot that happens at some point in the movie that makes it's like I didn't really see it coming. It's very interesting. But Glass Onion is, I feel, really great. And also Netflix has bought 2 of these. So, they bought like kind of like 2 Knives Out-esque movies.
Is it on Netflix or is it just
on
in
Netflix,
theater?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was it was a new model they tried out where they released it in theaters for I think like a month and then they put it on Netflix and it came out on Netflix I think on Christmas Day or right before. But very cool. So Glass Onion came out, and I think Rian Johnson is writing the next one as we speak. So there will be another Benoit Blanc mystery probably in like 2 years or something. But all on board for that. And then I finished Spy Family. They wrapped their first season, and I love it. Great show, wonderful intro music and outro music, and the story is great and adorable. And there's going to be a new season and a movie in 2023, both of which I will review on this podcast. And then the final thing that I've been doing is I finished Chainsaw Man, the anime, and I was like, I need more of this. Actually, halfway through the season of Chainsaw Man, something happened. Like an episode ended, and I was like, I need to know what happens next immediately. And so I just started reading the manga you could just Google, I think, any manga and just like Chainsaw Man read online, and you'll just find a bunch of sites that host it for free. And I did that. I just like read through like 100 chapters of Chainsaw Man over the course of like 2 weeks. And that manga is great, and I'm excited for season 2 of it. So all 3 of those I highly recommend. Glass Onion, the first season of Spy X Family, and then the show and the comic of Chainsaw Man are top things for 2022 for me that I greatly enjoyed.
Well, I can tell you the hardware that I enjoyed most in 2022 was probably my Steam Deck.
Hey.
The year of the Steam Deck, I have to say. a very good device that I guess is sort of new to 2022. I guess it technically maybe launched towards the very end of 2021, but
it became widely available though.
Yeah, so it feels like it was like new to this year. But any parting wisdom?
You know what I realized right before we started recording? I was downstairs just looking at my TV. That show, or that movie that guy from Channel 5 made for HBO is out, I think today, or it came out maybe yesterday. I think it's called like This Place Rules or whatever. It's his like documentary he made in the lead up to January 6th. And it's on HBO now. So if you have HBO, you can totally check it out. I'm very interested. I'll probably watch it today, actually, now that I realize that it's out. So go check that out.
And on that note, we will catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.